I would see this drug dealer come on campus, and I would see him pick up other girls that were in the dean's list and sorority. And I'm not going to go through the whole details of the story, but basically I would see him come pick up different girls, and I wondered who he was. And eventually one day we met, and he asked me what my name was. And when I told him what my name was, he kind of broke down the fact that I had this real African name, Kemba Nyambi, but then I had the slave master last name Smith. And he kind of broke it down in a way that no guy that I was ever interested in broke it down to me before. So there were kind of like butterflies and everything when I, talked to him. But eventually when I got back on campus, because this was like a public gathering where people were around, when I got back on campus, there were girls that were coming up to me and saying, what did you all talk about? What was he like? And so that insecure, not confident young girl for that moment felt like I was important because people were asking me about what happened. And so long story short, there were some red flags. I know some of us, men and women, know about red flags in relationships. I recognize your face too, Hampton. Yep. So there were red flags, and so I didn't pay attention to some of those red flags and kind of brush them underneath the rug. And eventually there was a point in time where he was physically abusive to me, and it was something that I had never experienced it before. And as soon as it was over, I basically had in my mind that I wanted to get away from him and I never wanted to see him again. And then came the I'm sorry's, it'll never happen again, him crying in my lap telling me how he didn't want me to be afraid of him. And even still, I wasn't convinced, but it wasn't until I got around some of my other girlfriends, and this is, again, me not going through the whole story. You gotta get the book, read the book in order to get the whole story. But when I got around my girlfriends after this incident, none of my girlfriends came up to me to say, oh my God, Kemba, what happened? Did he beat you? And so at that point, I started feeling, insecure, felt like I couldn't talk to my girlfriends about what had happened, and I kind of went inside of a shell. And so instead of me going back on campus and going to student counseling, I basically internalized it and dealt with it on my own, and I didn't get away from him. I ended up staying with him until my face healed, because basically he had strangled me to the point where blood vessels had popped all over my face and in my eyeballs, and had beat me all over my body. And so I stayed with him until that cleared up, and I didn't talk to anybody about it and kind of thought that it would never happen again. And so, of course, it did happen again, but as moving forward within the relationship, there was a point in time, and I'm fast forwarding, there was a point in time where he had killed his best friend because he thought his best friend had cooperated with authorities. And at that point, I couldn't believe that I was actually with someone who had taken another person's life. And that puppy love that I thought I had for him in the beginning turned more so to fear, and me not really knowing how to navigate it or how to get out of it. And I was thinking a little bit earlier, because sometimes I rewind, and I think growing up I had a perfect childhood. Well, nobody actually has a perfect childhood, but I'm not going to tell all the stuff. But my parents tried to provide the best for me, but at the same time they controlled everything in my life. And so when I got to college, I allowed myself to get into this other situation where I felt like I had no control. And I know it may sound crazy to some, but I didn't feel like I could go to my parents. I didn't feel like I could go to authorities, especially after he killed his best friend. And so things escalated where the government was investigating him more. And there was a point in time where I was actually with him on the run for 8-9 months, and And let me back up. The prosecutor said in my case that I never handled, used, or sold any of the drugs that were involved. Basically, I was his girlfriend. I wasn't knowledgeable of his business dealings or anything like that. So when I was with him during this 8 or 9 month period, so you all, some may say, well, you were just this drug dealer's girlfriend. You were probably living a life. But when he was on the run, basically he told me he wanted me to meet him in Houston, Texas. And I can remember getting there on the bus, and he met me, and I thought that, he was going to pick me up in a car. And basically he walked there, and he said that we were going to walk to the new place that he had gotten. And we walked, it started raining. And I can remember by the time we got to the place that he had gotten, it was actually in one of the worst neighborhoods in Houston, Texas, the 3rd Ward, where there were bars on the door, bars on the window, and roaches were crawling in the apartment. And so we went from Houston, Texas to Arizona, and then to San Diego, California, and then to Seattle, Washington. And so the money at this point had run out. He was going from city to city in a U-Haul truck. I was with him. Prior to me being with him, he had been with my best friend from my college days, and she was with him when he killed his best friend. And so, drama. And basically, when we were going these different places, he had thought that he would find her. And so always in the back of my mind too was what's going to happen when he finds her, and me being fearful of what even was going to happen to me. And so it became a point in time where I thought that I might have been pregnant. And this was when we were in Seattle, Washington. And when we were in Seattle, Washington, there were a couple of times where we slept in the bus station, and we were walking around the city not knowing where we were going to get our next meal from. And when I realized that I may be pregnant, that's when I got enough courage within myself to realize that I needed to seek medical attention. And he actually let me go to the clinic. And I can remember barely making it to the clinic office because I was getting ready to black out. And then I was able to get medical treatment, and I was able to get, social services checks so I could get some food. And so ultimately in Seattle, Washington, that's when I got enough courage to realize that I wanted my life to be back to normal, that I needed to get back to Virginia to my parents. And I thank God for him moving Peter's heart, because basically Peter at one point felt like he wasn't man enough to even touch me because he was embarrassed, I guess, in the condition that he was in. And basically he ended up getting me a train ticket to go back home to Virginia. And so in my 2-day train ride back to Virginia, my biggest fear was that my dad is going to kill me coming home pregnant. But that was not my biggest problem. My biggest problem was that I had been indicted by the federal government.